When we think about anxiety, our minds usually jump to, well, our minds, right? We think about that storm of worry, of fear, just swirling around in our heads. But what if I told you that's only half the story? The truth is, anxiety speaks through our bodies in some really powerful, really physical ways that we often just don't understand. So today, let's get into that physical side.
Have you ever felt that tight, uncomfortable knot deep in your stomach right before something stressful? What if it's more than just a passing case of the nerves? We're going to dive into how these very real physical feelings are deeply, deeply connected to anxiety.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to make a really important distinction here. There's a huge difference between just feeling anxious and actually having an anxiety disorder.
Look, feeling anxious before a big job interview or a presentation, that's totally normal. In fact, it's a healthy response to stress. An anxiety disorder, though, that's a different beast. That's when the worry becomes so excessive and so persistent that it actually starts getting in the way of your daily life. And a lot of the time, there isn't even a clear reason for it. A really common example of this is something called generalized anxiety disorder, or GAD for short. The key word here is generalized. It's not about one specific thing. The clinical definition really zeroes in on how persistent it is. We're talking excessive worry about all sorts of things, lasting for at least 6 months.
And this is not some rare condition. About 3% of adults in the US deal with GAD. I mean, think about that. That's millions and millions of people. So if this sounds familiar to you, you are definitely not alone. Far from it.
So how does this mental state, this internal worry, create such a tangible physical ripple effect that you can feel all through your body?
Now, a lot of these symptoms you've probably seen before, right? A racing heart, feeling dizzy, not being able to sleep. These are kind of the classic signs, but anxiety's reach can go even further, into some places that might actually surprise you.
For instance, let's go back to that knot in your stomach. Sometimes it can become a whole lot more than that. Anxiety can directly mess with your digestive system, leading to things like nausea, diarrhea, or even making you lose your appetite completely. That connection between your mind and your gut is incredibly real.
And here's another one that might seem kind of random. Have you ever just been hit with a sudden hot flash out of nowhere, only to feel cold and shivery a minute later? That sensation, like your body's thermostat is just going haywire, that can absolutely be a direct physical symptom of your body's anxiety response.
So, why? Why does all this stuff happen? What is going on under the hood, biologically speaking, that causes all these wild physical reactions? Let's take a look. It pretty much all comes down to your body's ancient, hardwired alarm system. When your brain senses a threat, and it doesn't matter if it's a real saber-toothed tiger or just the thought of your inbox, it flips the switch on what we call the fight or flight response. It just floods your body with hormones to get you ready for action.
Let's trace how that works, starting with your breath. When that fight or flight response kicks in, your breathing automatically gets faster and more shallow. This is called hyperventilation. And that process is the direct cause of that dizzy, tingly, lightheaded feeling that so many people get when they're having a panic attack.
And it really becomes this vicious cycle, doesn't it? You start hyperventilating, which tricks you into feeling like you can't get enough air, which then, of course, just ramps up the anxiety and the panic even more. And a very similar thing happens with your heart. To get you ready to either fight or run, your heart starts pumping way faster and your blood vessels actually narrow to push more blood to your muscles. And that process is exactly what causes those hot flashes and those sudden swings in body temperature we were talking about.
Now, the main chemical player in all of this is a hormone called cortisol. It's the body's #1 stress hormone. In a short burst, it's super helpful. But when anxiety becomes chronic, those high levels of cortisol start telling your body to shut down any functions it thinks are non-essential during a crisis, like, say, your digestive system and your immune system.
It's actually kind of wild, because your immune system has a two-sided reaction to this. In the short term, that cortisol blast can actually give your immune system a little boost. But over the long term, chronic anxiety does the exact opposite. It wears down your defenses, making you way more likely to get sick with things like the cold or the flu.
And that brings us to a really critical point. What happens when your body is stuck in this state of high alert, when the stress never really turns off? Well, the long-term complications can be pretty serious.
When it's left untreated, chronic anxiety is linked to a whole host of other major issues. I mean, we're talking about depression, chronic digestive problems, insomnia that just won't quit, chronic pain. It can even lead to major problems at work and in your social life. The physical toll eventually becomes a whole life toll.
It all really boils down to this question. What happens to a system that was designed for short bursts of emergency when that emergency just never ends? When that alarm bell is constantly ringing, your body never gets a chance to rest, to recover, to repair. It wears down every single system you have.
But listen, after all of that heavy stuff, here is the single most important thing to remember. This is not a life sentence, not even close. Anxiety is absolutely treatable, and there are very clear pathways to feeling better.
So what's the game plan? Well, the path forward almost always starts with getting a proper diagnosis from a professional. From there, treatment is often a combination of things. Therapy to learn new coping skills, sometimes medication to help rebalance your brain chemistry, and always support from lifestyle changes like exercise and meditation. It's a team effort.
And I really just want to leave you with this. This is a quote from Medical News Today, and it says it all. Most people who receive treatment recover well and enjoy a good quality of life. There is so much hope. Understanding the physical side of anxiety is that crucial first step. It's not about being afraid of these symptoms, but learning to listen to the signals your body is sending you. Because with the right support, recovery isn't just possible, it's likely.